back to my channel, or if you happen to be new here, my name is Jess. Today we're filming a very exciting video. It is a video that is so highly requested from me. I get questions about this on Instagram, I get questions about this on YouTube. I honestly get this question at least once or twice a day. And it is a video for recommendations on what books to read for Stephen King. And this is kind of a hard video to film in a way because I've been reading Stephen for so long that, I mean, I've read almost every single book by him that I own, and I've loved every single book by him except for one. So when it comes to recommending books, I'm just going to recommend books to you that I really enjoyed above all the others, the ones that really stood out to me. Like I said, I do obviously love all of them, but I wanted to go ahead and give you like my top picks, like my top favorites and where you should start with them. So let's go ahead and just get started, but as a disclaimer, it really depends on the person reading the book whether or not you are going to like them. If you're looking for Stephen King book recommendations, so I guess this video is for you, but yeah, like I said, it really depends on the person. But let's go ahead and get started anyway, because I really just love to gush about him. Now I'm going to be a little bit typical here because I have recommended this book before on my channel. I talk about this book so often on my channel, but it is seriously just the best short story compilation that he has, and it is honestly just a really great book as its own, and it is different seasons. This book has, if you're familiar with The Stand, if you're familiar with Shawshank Redemption, those are both in this as well. They were made into movies, they were made into very great movies. They are probably his most popular movies that exist, but in here it is called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, so you kind of know that by its name. And then obviously Stand By Me is called The Body. That is what is in this as well. This also has The Breathing Method and Apt Pupil. So to give you kind of a rundown, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption is about a man who is wrongfully accused of something and he's put in prison for the murder of his wife, and he attempts to escape. That is what that one is about. The Apt Pupil is about a boy who starts kind of reading to his neighbor, and then he finds out his neighbor was a Nazi in World War II, and the ending of that, you would not believe the ending for that story. That is like my favorite ending from a Stephen King story ever. And then The Body is obviously the movie Stand By Me, if you guys are familiar with that. It is about 4 boys who kind of go on this adventure and they find a dead body on train tracks, and that is, it's more like of a coming of age story, but also like a Stephen King coming of age story because there is still a dead body in it. And then The Breathing Method is about a doctor, and he's sort of in like this society. It's kind of hard to explain, but that story is probably my least favorite in this entire series, but it is very weird. It does kind of revolve around a pregnant woman, and you just really have to read it to experience it. So definitely the first book that I would recommend would be Different Seasons. The next book that I want to recommend is a fairly large book, but I think the storyline for this definitely makes up for the fact that it is like 700 pages. It is Needful Things. This book is about a small town, obviously in Derry, Maine, in Castle Rock, where a store called Needful Things opens, and the first customer for that store is our main character. Now the main character goes in and he decides, it's kind of like a resale shop that he sells a bunch of random things, and the boy decides that there is a baseball card that he really wants, and then he comes to find out that what he is asking for, what the owner of the store is asking for, is it's a very high price. Now he asks different things, like he sometimes wants you to murder people, he sometimes wants you to get rid of problems that he has, and the price is always incredibly steep. The owner just really wants to know what people are willing to pay for the things that they think that they desire the most, and that's what the story follows. And it is very creepy, but also very wonderful, I think, as a story. It's obviously one of my most favorites. I read this in about a day, even though it is quite a large book. I just could not get enough of it. So if you are into stories like that, I think you would like this. This isn't necessarily as creepy, as there's not like monsters or anything in it, but it is still very creepy because it does deal with the psyche a lot and what people are willing to pay for things that they think that they really deserve. And like I said, sometimes that does include murdering other people. So I definitely recommend this if you're looking for more just like a little bit creepy, more thriller, and not so much like horror themed. Now these two books do not match at all, but I had to show them because they are kind of a pairing. It is The Shining as well as Dr. Sleep. I'll start with The Shining first because it is the first one in the series. The Shining we are all pretty much familiar with. It is about a family who moves to a hotel in Colorado because the father, whose name is Jack, decides that he wants to continue writing, but he wants to do it sort of in like a remote location, and he thinks a hotel is pretty big enough that his son and his wife can kind of go about doing their own thing and they won't feel ignored if he is writing. A lot of spooky shit starts happening in this. The hotel is a little bit haunted, obviously. I don't want to give too much away if by chance you haven't seen or read this and you're not usually a fan of horror and you're not familiar with this, but a lot of things start happening. Jack sort of starts losing his mind, and that is what this story follows. And this next book, Dr. Sleep, was released quite a bit later. I mean, a very long time ago. This recently came out within like the last 5 years, but it follows Dan Torrance, who is the son of Jack Torrance, our main character from The Shining. So what Dan seeks to accomplish in this, there's what is described as a very special 12-year-old girl who is essentially fleeing these people. They are like paranormal murderers, essentially, that they're kind of ghosts, kind of cultish. It's very different, but that is what this book takes place around. He is trying to defend her, he's trying to get her away from them, he's trying to save her from them, and it kind of ties, this does a really good job of tying these two books together. It is a very great continuation of this book. While I think The Shining is definitely the more important of the two, I think you get a lot of backstory from this book that you were missing in the first one, because obviously The Shining is very removed from society. It is just about them in the hotel. The entire book takes place in the one hotel, and it's very like cut off and remote. And then obviously in this one, he is just the little boy from The Shining is just a middle-aged man going about his day, going about his business, and then he meets this 12-year-old girl, and then he's kind of set on a path to help her. And I really like this one because it takes place in a surrounding like that we're more familiar with. It doesn't take place really in like the middle of nowhere like the first one did. So I definitely think that you should read both of them. If you're planning to read The Shining, I would definitely go ahead and just pick up Dr. Sleep at the same time. Now the next book I want to talk about is another one of those hulking books that he has written, but it is Under the Dome. They made this into a television show. If you're familiar with the television show at all, it's very, very different from the TV show, but I still really, really enjoy it. It is about a small town called Chester's Mill, and it obviously takes place in Maine like most of Stephen King's books. If you're not familiar with that, most of them do take place in a place called Derry, Maine, that he has created for the setting of most of his books. And this town, one day they wake up and it is completely covered by this dome and no one's able to enter or exit. The climate starts going a little bit hinky. It's very, very interesting. But it follows a man who is trying to escape. He is fleeing these people. He's fleeing something that happens, and I won't go into what the situation is because it does give away a lot from the book. And he gets caught underneath the dome and he sort of starts this other life essentially. The reason why I really, really love this book is because it shows what it's like for close quarters with people, because obviously they're not allowed to leave. These are people who everybody knows, pretty much everybody else except for our main character, because like I said, he's obviously stranded underneath this dome when it falls. But a whole caste system pops up when this happens. There's a lot of religious people that kind of go a little bit crazy. There are politicians. A lot of really dark things start happening. My favorite part of this is obviously the ending, you know, where the dome comes from, what is happening. This is not scary. It is more thriller for me, I think. This was the first Stephen King book I read that I was really like, this isn't horror. This is not what I would consider horror. This is definitely not scary. There's nothing like that in it. There is murder, there are bad things that happen in this, but I would not consider this horror at all. So if you're wanting a good book to start with Stephen King and you're looking more for, you know, just like a good story but not so much spooky, scary things, I would definitely go with this book. And these last two books that I have to speak about are my most favorites aside from different seasons. I have read these books a ton. I absolutely love them. I think they're both incredibly underrated and they're both very different. So that is why I'm saving these last two. The first one that I want to speak about, ignore the sticker on here, is The Dark Half. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story, but J.K. Rowling said that she was actually trying to unwrite one of her characters. She wanted to get rid of one of her characters from her series, and she felt like she really couldn't get rid of him. Like the character itself was preventing her from getting rid of him, and that is what this book is about. This book is about an author who is writing a character and decides he's done with the series, he doesn't want to write about it anymore, he kind of just wants to kill the character off. The character is not a good character, it is an incredibly horrible character. He's like a murderer, just not an all-around good character. And what happens is that character actually comes to life, and the character seeks the author out and tries to kill him, tries to kill his family, to do all these other horrible things. This is definitely spooky. So then what starts to happen is the character in this book, once he has come to life, starts murdering people and leaving the author's fingerprints. He starts, you know, reenacting things from his novels, and it starts really pointing fingers in the author's direction. The author's name is Thad, and Thad is sent on this mission to essentially prove that he is innocent, to get rid of this character. But the kind of the story of this is, how can he prove that it wasn't him when this being is actually creating these murders, or is actually murdering people when he is the author of this character? So that is the line that this book draws. I absolutely love this book. No one ever speaks about this book. Once again, it is The Dark Half, but I loved this book. I could not get enough of it, and I think it is definitely a book that you need to read if you are at all wondering what kind of Stephen King book you should read. This book also kind of intrigues, like from a literary point of view, if you are into writing, if you are into storytelling, things like that. That definitely has a lot of elements of this in it, and I really, really like that he blended the two of them. So that's why this is one of my most favorite books, and why I wanted to save this for the second to last book. Once again, ignore the horrible sticker because I apparently don't take stickers off of any of my books anymore. This is my second most favorite book. This is right behind Different Seasons. I have read this book so many times. I absolutely love it. No one ever speaks about it, but they absolutely should. I had one person comment on one of my videos that this was a book that they also absolutely loved. It is completely underrated, and I have to 100% agree. It is Jumaki by Stephen King. So this follows our main character, Edgar, who is a construction site worker. Well, not a worker, but he kind of like owns a construction site, like owns a business for that, and he is seriously injured in an accident, and he loses pretty much all of his money and a little bit of his mind, and then his wife leaves him. So he decides that he's going to move down to the Florida Keys. This is one of the only books that Stephen King has ever written that does not take place in Derry, Maine, and I really like that he did that in this book because it gives us a very refreshing setting. So if you're going into Stephen King and you're like, I really don't want to read about Derry, you know, you've seen the movies, you're a little bit familiar with it, and you want something completely new, I think that you'll really like the change of scenery in this. But essentially what happens is Edgar moves to Florida, kind of retires because he has some money left, and he just starts painting, and he starts painting so well, and he's never been a painter, he's never done anything like that, and so he starts to wonder kind of like where all the inspiration is coming from. He lives right on the beach so he can see the sun, and that's usually what he paints. After a while he meets a woman named Elizabeth Eastlake, and they sort of start having this little bit of romance, and then the further along in the story you start to realize that there's a lot of ghosts in Elizabeth's past, literally, and that is what this story is about. The reason why I really loved this book is because one, the storyline with the paintings, which I won't go too much in depth because I don't want to spoil it for you, I think that was absolutely cool. Also the setting for this is amazing. I am a fan of Derry, Maine. I think if I wanted to visit a fictional place but not necessarily live there, it would be Derry. I think that obviously because a lot of fucked up things happen there, because obviously a lot of awful things happen there, but I still think it's very cool. But I love the setting in this. There's a lot of swamp, a lot of beach, you know, a lot of like kind of like tropical setting, but it's done in a very different way. It's done like kind of southern creepy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term southern gothic, but that is what this book reminds me of. I absolutely love this book. It's it paints such a vivid picture, no pun intended, and I just think this is a book that everybody should read. I think that if you're starting out with Stephen King and you, like I said, are kind of tired of Derry, kind of tired of the whole Maine setting, I would try this because I think it's very different from the books that he's written before. Alright guys, I have no idea how many I actually recommended in there, but if you guys would like more, let me know. Just leave comments down below and kind of like the books that you're looking for, and I can sort of pick them out for you from the ones that I own from Stephen King. Like I said, he is such a diverse writer. A lot of people don't think that he is, but he doesn't just write horror. He writes a lot of like mental thrillers, you know, if that's like a genre, like a lot of things that happen inside the mind. There's obviously a lot of horror, there's some alien, there are, you know, like thrillers, things like that. So if there's a specific type of book that you're looking for, just sort of like a type of vibe, let me know, because like I said, I have read almost every single one of these, so I should be able to give you some kind of recommendation, but those are really just my favorites from him, and those are the ones that when somebody asks me what book should I read, those are the ones that come to mind first. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!